All right, morning everyone. This is Peter Svidler starting my second Banter Blitz this week, and as usual, quickly a sound check. We all know what happens with me and equipment of any sort. So, can you hear me? If you can hear me, how well can you hear me, and so on and so forth. Loud and clear is good. I see people are already trying to swindle me in chat. I'm pretty sure I played Chess Player 07 more than once during these sessions over the course of the last year or so. So your gambit did not work, sir. But anyway, that's not particularly important. We'll get to the actual chess playing in a moment. But today I decided to come in early so that we can sort of watch the Olympiad together. But since Thursday there were two more days of games in Baku, lots of excitement, and yesterday featured maybe potentially the most important match of the tournament. There still will be a lot of high-level clashes, but yesterday was a day of two USA versus Russia matches, both in the women's and in the men's section. And the US came out on top. They won a very hard-fought match in the women's section, and the men's section finished 2-2. I guess the US will be the unhappier of the two teams there, because Fabiano had a dodgy position at some point against Sergei, but on the other hand, on board 4, Alexander Grishuk managed to win a position which really did not look all that promising in terms, at least, of victory chances. It was a normal anti-Berlin, which generally I think Sasha equalized with no difficulty whatsoever. But then Robson started doing some strange things, I guess heavily influenced by his impending time trouble, and lost. But the big story of the day was Wesley So has beaten Jan Nepomniachtchi with black. Jan, prior to that game, had 7 out of 7, was far and away the outstanding performer in this Olympiad, won all 7 of his first games, and lost yesterday after drifting into an unpleasant position with white in a quiet Italian. And this means that there are 3 teams now on top with 14 out of the possible 16 points, and lots of high-level clashes await us today. We almost got a Carlsen-Karyakin game, which we will have no shortage of those in a couple of months' time, but it would be fun to see them play at the Olympiad. But pairings went the other way. Norway, when I looked at the standings after round 8, I thought that it's very likely that Norway, it doesn't take a genius to decide that, but it was quite clear that Norway will play either the US or Russia. And Caruana Carlsen is nothing to sniff at. It will also be a very exciting game, but would be fun to see Carlsen play Karyakin. And now that our team and the Norwegians, they have to they have to have the same result this round, basically, for that pairing to become possible again, which might happen, but we never know. And we'll finish this wrap up in a second, but since I am acting as a bit of a warm up act for the Olympiad today, I wanted to show you the pairings. The Indians have recovered from their unfortunate loss to the Americans in round 7, which was mainly due to an absolutely amazing game between Shankland and Situraman, finishing in Shankland's victory, despite the fact that at some point in the game machines gave like 3 lines which had the evaluation of about -9, and both of them with all of them with quiet moves, which was the most impressive part. There was some kind of an unbelievably messy position in which the machine said, you need to rule out some very obscure counterplay which you can't even see right now, and then you will give mate. And Seturaman went for something more direct and miscalculated and even lost. But yesterday the Indians have beaten England, which in their turn has beaten China in round 7. Was a very impressive match, which also featured some Nigel Short related drama to do with the new anti-cheating regulations, which you probably have seen on the internet, that it has been widely reported. I personally think that the idea of stopping players on the way to the toilet is ridiculous, but there are people out there, respected people, who think it's a great idea, and that actually is the most surprising thing for me. The fact that FIDE goes overboard and creates new rules which are at the very least of huge nuisance value is not particularly surprising. The fact that this actually gains support from some of the very respected pros is a little bit surprising to me, but that's life. And yeah, let's just briefly have a look at what's going on. So Ukraine, which is back on top board after beating Georgia yesterday. They had a couple of accidents on top boards. They had a huge scare against the Canadians in round 7. Evgeny Bareyev has beaten Pavel Ulyanov with black on board 1. Always happy to see Zhenya do well. We're great friends with Pavel, but the return of Evgeny Bareyev to top level chess. I've known the guy and have been friends with the guy for 20 years by now. So for me, it's always very pleasant news. And on board 4, Erik Hansen, Chess Bra, was totally winning against Volakitin and managed to misplay that game to such an extent that he even lost. And in round 8, Badur Jabava continued his soul-crushing ways with the very soft d4, d5, knight c3, and beat Ruslan Ponomarev in a very nice miniature on board 1. But I think every other game was won by the Ukrainians. So Ukrainians are playing the Indians on board 1, and this is the board pairings. Ulyanov is white against Hare Krishna, Adiban is playing Ponomarev. You can see it on your screen. And then the match between the US and Norway, which will feature Caruana versus Carlsen, and then the host of Norwegians, youngsters and not so youngsters, against the expected lineup from the US. I have a feeling that the top 3 will probably play every single game from now on. It's only to be expected, and Shanklin gets the nod instead of Ray Robson, who lost that game yesterday. And a little bit further down, you get Iran playing on board 3 against England. So the Iran continues to grow into a chess superpower. They have a lot of very, very talented youngsters. Will be very interesting to see that. And our team is playing the hosts. Nepomniachtchi is finally given a rest after playing 8 games on the trot. And these, I think, will be the four matches to watch. Although below, of course, there's a lot of very, very strong players playing, so there's always something going on at the Olympiad. But these are the 4 matches that will be probably attracting the most attention this round. I'll be watching, same as I guess most of you, from 2 o'clock my time and something o'clock your time. I'm not sure where all of you are, and I think that should probably be sufficient time spent on the Olympiad. Let's play some chess. I also, somewhat tongue-in-cheek, mentioned the idea of trying to get to 2800 on Chess24 in the process of playing this session. This might be slightly over-optimistic, but I will give it my best shot. And I think I will continue playing the King's Indian. I quite liked that idea when I when I did it the last session. So I think at least until I get my head completely bashed in, I will continue with my policy of King's Indian with at least black and maybe even white in some games for the time being. Norway will find it, I think, hard to actually win the Olympiad. There's people discussing the idea that Norway might win the Olympiad. They will do. I think they will do very well because it will be slightly disrespectful if I call them the support cast, but Magnus is doing quite well. Not as well as some people would like him to do, because I think people are always very upset when he doesn't win a game. But generally speaking, I think his results are perfectly respectable in this Olympiad. Would be quite good for more or less anyone else, I think. But for him, people really think he should be absolutely crushing the competition. And when he makes a draw every now and again, people are upset. And the rest of the team is playing, good solid chess. I'm not sure if I should take on c4 here. I studied this line some time ago, but by some time ago, I mean a lot of time ago. And I'm not sure what the conclusions are. Generally speaking, white kind of invites black to take on c4 here, because then it's much easier for him to deal with the counterplay. Black might create on the queen side. But I think also that knight g3 is very, very slow here. And my opponent is trying to do something about it by creating an idea of knight f5 check. But I'm not even sure I should really be worried about that, to be honest. It doesn't seem like something I actually need to stop necessarily. I will just pretend this is not happening and start my own play on the queen side. Sorry. I don't know if chess is big in general in the Middle East. I think that might be an overstatement. But chess is definitely becoming more and more popular in Iran. There's been a definite chess boom in Iran. And the results their juniors are showing in world championships these days are tremendous, and they are gradually becoming a very, very serious competitor. And you can see it in this Olympiad as well, because they are playing on board 3 against one of the top teams. I think queen g2 was a mistake. I think he had to go rook g2 and keep the queen on g5 to at least have some counterplay. Now I have to be completely winning because I'm a pawn up. This knight is about to land on d4, and there's still no counterplay on the king side forthcoming. As I mentioned, knight g3 may have been a little bit too slow. I should probably pay some attention to the idea of f3, f4 though. China is so far disappointing, frankly, a little bit in this Olympiad, considering that they're the title holders. I expected them to do very well again, and the Olympiad is still not over, of course, and they might still do okay, but so far they haven't really performed to the standard we've come to expect from them. Is it possible to become top GM without coach? You probably will need to start working with somebody at some point. I'm not sure. It depends on your definition of top GM first and foremost. But I think generally at some point in time you will need some support. I'm looking for something forced to sort of settle the matter here, but so far struggling to come up with anything decisive. Like knight b2, knight before knight takes a2 and c3 occurred to me, but it doesn't seem to quite work. There are plenty of opportunities to switch to the technical conversion, but I'm looking for something more flashy and not really succeeding. What's my opinion on the Yanish Gambit? Yanish Gambit is definitely very playable. I don't know if that answers your question. Yeah, I'm getting a bit mixed up here because I wanted to play queen a5 now, but I realized as I was planning that, I realized what the drawback of that idea is, and I no longer like it anymore. Yeah, that's a bit annoying, because if I can't play Queen A5 here, I should not have played Knight D4. That's kind of the point. I'm still, of course, doing very well, but I'm a bit annoyed with myself for not thinking this through properly. Now, Yanish Gambit has at some point become, you know, very, very popular, even at very top level, because it's one of those openings which they've been sort of consigned to the scrap heap for no actual reason, and have never really been studied by top players properly. And then when you know, players like Rajabov and players of his strength started investing time and effort into actually studying the Yanish, it turned out that, you know, there's nothing really wrong with the opening. And then it became reasonably popular for a while, and a lot of players included it in their repertoire. But now it's kind of died down a little bit, because as usual with these openings, I don't know why I included this check. If he takes with the rook, I could have just taken on e2 twice immediately, but there's nothing wrong with including this check first. As usual with openings like Yanish, when they return to top level practice, they return for a while, and then the white players start adjusting, and they start actually looking at it seriously, and then it becomes much less interesting for the black players, because they play against well-prepared opponents, and it's not a great opening. It's a playable opening, but it's not a great opening. So we've managed to. Okay, I actually created a list of people I played last time, so as not to play the same people over and over again, and I will be glancing at it every now and again, because I really want to avoid that. And this is a kind of a return of a debt I had last session, because Duke had his internet cut out on him during the game, so I'm redoing this game from scratch, so to speak. 2 Kings Indians in a row. Let's go for something exciting, and also something I don't know anything about. That's always the way. Knight bd7 is not the way to go here. I'm pretty sure you need to castle, because after knight bd7 you might now be forced to go knight g8, because knight h5, I will probably not hesitate to play g4 and just pick this knight up. Knight bd7 is not a proper response to the 4 pawns attack. I could also start with knight f3. There's no real, and this is also a mistake. This actually is something I want to cover in a little bit of detail. In positions like this, the only real source of counterplay for black here will be the c7, c5 break with the d-pawn still on the board. If you take on e5 and I recapture, frankly I can take with either pawn, but if I recapture with the d-pawn and the knight goes to g8 and I just play knight f3, which is what will happen in a second, there's now no serious way for black to challenge this pawn structure. And he just ends up in a position which, you know, he has very restricted space for maneuver here. And, I mean, it's a solid position and he's not lost by any means, but I think it really is, in search of counterplay, black really needs to try and retain as many pawn breaks as possible. Knight c5 might be a decent idea. If that's his, if that's the reason he played b6, I'm very, very impressed. Although, I mean, this endgame will still be hugely better for white. I quite like the way my opponent is kind of dealing with adversity here, but his position is still far from pleasant. I'll keep the queens on for now. I don't think I need to, I would have gone for the endgame if he, if he takes on d1, develops some more of my pieces, of course I will go for that endgame, but if I'm given an option, I will prefer to keep the queens on the board and play for a more direct conversion of my advantage here. If he goes queen e7, I will play g4 and then probably just h3. I think it's very important for me to lock this knight down on h6. Yeah, India is one of the more interesting stories of this Olympiad because you can't say that they feature a lot of unknown players. It's not the same case as Iran, where if you've been following junior chess, perhaps Iran's success will not be a huge surprise for you. But generally speaking, Iran is a bit of an unknown quality. India has a 2750 player on board 1, and then some very, very strong and reasonably established players on lower boards. So it really isn't such a huge surprise that they're doing well. But still, the fact that they are consistently doing very, very well here and are playing on top boards and currently are in a tie for first is very impressive. And I think, if I were on the Indian team, I'd be, I don't know, this is probably wrong because Vishy is a national treasure, but it's his choice not to play, and the constant debate about whether the Indian team would have done even better with Vishy on top board is, I think, a little bit, I should be careful here because I don't really want to insult anyone there, and I don't really understand this dynamics particularly well. But I think it's a little bit demeaning to the players playing currently. I mean, they are doing very, very well. Oops, sorry. They're doing very, very well without Vishy. And this, I can win a whole piece by taking on f6 here, but knight eg5 is also very, very strong. I don't know what's better. I think I'll go for the material because it's simpler. So I think instead of this endless debate on whether they would have done better, worse, or the same with Vishy on the team, I think it's more productive, so to speak, to just enjoy what they're doing without him. And there's plenty there to enjoy. This shouldn't be a particularly difficult conversion. And yes, of course, it would be ridiculous to claim anything else. Of course, Vishy would improve and would walk into every single team in this Olympiad. It's not at all what I'm suggesting. It's just that seemingly regardless of how well the Indian team is doing, there is this constant source of discussion which is not really anything to do with them, and I don't know how productive that is. Kind of trying to find mate here, but once again not sure if I can succeed, and I can. Let's just continue winning material. It's a bit regrettable that I'm doing this instead of giving some kind of direct mate for the second game in a row, but sometimes you just need to switch to the materialistic approach, and there's nothing for it. Okay. It will take me a while to get to 2800 by this at this pace, so I probably should for now look for some higher rated opposition if I am to properly give this a shot. Okay, I hope you've had some coffee, mate, because you were complaining about no coffee. D5? Seriously? That should not be allowed. And this definitely should not be allowed. Yeah, I'm about to land myself in some weird spots here, because this is a line I never really studied in any kind of detail at all. Actually, knight d7, knight b6, and a5 is maybe the only thing in this line that I did look into, but I don't remember anything, which is an issue. I think I was planning to go for these lines when I looked at this. I remember there was a particular Russia-China summit during which we all had to prepare for... I think every single Chinese player at some point played this line for some reason. They all felt it was good, and they just kept on playing it. And therefore, we felt it will be worthwhile for us to, even those of us who don't actually play 1d4 on any kind of regular basis, to prepare for this line. And I think I even played a game against somebody like Wang Yue, or I mean one of the Chinese, I don't remember exactly who in this line, but that was a long time ago. I should probably think a little bit about this, because my instinct says that I should be the happier of the two about the trade of the dark square bishops, but I'm not sure what I'm basing this on, to be honest. Maybe it's not such a bright idea. Maybe I should put it on e3 instead. Black generally, despite the bishop on h7, black generally wants to play e6, e5, which is one of the reasons I wanted to play bishop f4. Because black wants to get this this structure on the queen side with my pawns on a4 and b2 and his pawns on a5, b7 and c6. And those structures generally seem to be quite comfortable for black. It's interesting that he still doesn't play e5 here. The point of my b3 move was that after bishop d6 I wanted to take and play queen e3. And now with the pawn on b3, black does not have knight b6, c4, which was bugging me a little bit. And I'm happy that I have this option now. But the thing about this structure is that black's position is incredibly resilient, and it's very difficult to make any kind of significant progress for white. I'm not sure I should be worried about the c5 break. I actually think I'm probably quite happy if he plays c5, because then I can play knight b5 and I have other options to improve my pieces. And this, I'm not sure what this is. My opponent seems to be fairly convinced about what he's doing here, but frankly I'm not. I think this is a bit too passive. He should have gone for something more concrete. And this is a very, very sad day for that knight on a8. Although, I mean, exploiting it will still obviously not be all that easy. And it will come back eventually. I don't know if I should play e5. I don't know. I'm always kind of... this is probably a mistake, but I just can't help myself. He will probably have to take on e4, and then we will get this weird structure, which, to be honest, I probably minimized my own advantage here by doing this. But it's a blitz game, and it's very, very difficult to kind of fight your instincts. And I wanted to gain some more space and to create some attacking ideas on the king side. And he probably forgot about the option of f5, and now I quite like my chances because I think I will have a very serious direct attack on the king side now. This shouldn't work. This shouldn't work somehow. I will actually even start with this. I don't see any reason not to. Plonk the rook on d6 and then you sort of take it from there. It doesn't really diminish my attack on the king side in any way, and it also makes me, you know, it makes... in many respects, it makes the attack a lot simpler. I think it's time to go for it. I could also include rook cd1 for the time being. And I can take with, frankly, either thing here. Both should be winning, frankly, but... let's go with this. King f8 was the last chance here, I think. And then I would have to think a little bit, but this should be a trivial win. f8 knight, actually he resigned a little bit early, because after king h7, f8 knight, he can play king g8, and there's no immediate mate, I think. But of course I am winning here after, let's say, queen takes e6. I will eventually give mate with checks. So far, so good. How do I get unrated challenges? I noticed too late that this is actually unrated. This helps me not at all in my quest for 2800. Whoa, b4. I haven't seen this in a while. This I haven't seen in a while. And it's not a bad idea at all, I have to say. It's a decent little system which probably doesn't promise a lot of advantage, but is most certainly very playable from the white side. Going for kind of extended double fianchetto with a pawn already on b4, which is generally useful in a lot of positions. who's there at the top? You keep on looking at the top as Ivanchuk does so often. I don't do it as much when I play, you know, Banter Blitz, but I generally just when I play seriously, I tend to just close my eyes and think with my eyes closed. The pieces get in the way. I'm not sure about this knight a6. If he just plays queen b3, this move becomes sort of pointless. The best player in history, can we just agree not to do those lists? I really suck at lists. Can't do lists at all. Yeah, knight a6 is just a complete... I mean, I somehow assume that there's also only bishop c3, which runs into knight e4, or b5, knight c5, which I of course would be very happy about. But yeah, queen b3 is... It makes my previous move look silly, frankly. And once again, I like d3 because now he can play bishop c3. And I don't have my knight e4 move. I quite like what my opponent is doing here, frankly. Although I can maybe go knight c5, knight a6, at least relocate this stupid knight from a6. But I will be worse, because his position is a lot more harmonious than mine. The knight is not really doing anything at all on e6 anyway. Maybe I should include this first. I mean, my remark about pieces, it might sound like I'm bragging or anything, but it's just my eyes get tired if I look at the pieces for any kind of serious length of time. I'm not sure if bishop f5, knight e4 is so great, but knight c5, queen c2, it has to go to some unfortunate squares as well. Arguably, I'm getting a little bit outplayed here. Although this position is not as grim as I originally thought at some point. I thought that I might never actually bring the knight back from its horrible station on a6. Have I ever played on a Dubrovnik chess set? It would be easier for me to answer that question if I knew what a Dubrovnik chess set is. Which I don't. Did I? Yeah, I blundered a full knight there. Yeah, we both me and my opponent just had this. I think we both calculated for knight c5 for a number of moves in a row, and then we both just kind of counted it as a possible move. Good spot by chat. Yeah, I blundered a full piece there, and it was not taken by my opponent. Well spotted, chat. But these things, you know, especially in a blitz game, these things are very liable to happen. These types of, you know, weird moments of mutual blindness. I'm not sure exactly what's going on here, but I think I should have enough counterplay here. Because of the knight on b1. The knight on b1 is not really participating in the game to any kind of great extent. Although I should be careful not to blunder any forks here. I wanted to play bishop d7, but then he goes d5, bishop takes c6. I mean, and I cannot take on d5 twice because... Maybe I can. I think maybe I can. Let's try this. Because queen d5 knight e7 mate would be a bit of a problem for me, obviously. But I think this might be fine. I think here I'm actually winning the material back. Should end in a draw though, but I can't really complain about this because I was never really better at any point in this game. What are my thoughts on both Olympiad teams like the USA? I think it's very, very unfair to describe it this way. It's not a bot team, it's the team features some players which chose to move to the US because it offered them better development opportunities, and I don't really see anything wrong with that at all. I mean, our current team is actually, you know, headed by a player who played for a different country for a while. So people make life decisions hoping to develop their chess game to the best of the, you know, to the best of their abilities, and it's not a bot team. I think it makes for good headlines, which is why this story was at some point, I think, pushed. It made it to national newspapers and so on and so forth. But no, I don't think it's a huge story. Yeah, well played by my opponent. Despite, I mean, apart from that that one moment when we both went completely crazy here. I played knight c5 and he didn't take, which would be a bit of a blow. But since you know, both of us were calculating knight c5 starting from this position, I think it's kind of understandable that we both forgot with a knight on d2 it can be taken. Whoops, sorry. Almost clicked on a non-premium member there. Why are all these challenges unrated? People really care about their rating for some reason. Or maybe they care about mine, I don't know. Yeah, the list is not, frankly, currently, maybe it's a bit of a mistake to start these things this early. I thought it might give all of us a chance to sort of start our day with a little bit of non-serious chess to prepare for the Olympiad, you know, for the full 5 hours. Whoa, that's a misclick. That obviously is not a move you should ever play in this position. That was supposed to be h6, not h5. If he plays g6 here, my position is probably objectively lost. Yeah, I'm very happy about this not happening. I take all kinds of challenges, including 3-minute. I was looking through the list for some of the higher rated ones, but as I mentioned, perhaps an early start kind of limits my opportunities because you know, normal people are still asleep at this time. I would very much like to play knight b6, but unfortunately then knight takes e6 and queen d4 wins material. My position is still horrible here, but actually with the bishop on g2 I can play knight e5, because now knight c4 is an actual threat. Maybe this will allow me to get out of the corner a little bit. But actually he can just play b3 and then start driving it back. I called myself not normal, old shaky. You don't need to get all upset. This at least gives me some hope, because you know, obviously I can get immediately mated in the, on the king side by something connected with f5. But if I don't, I will at least have some counterplay. If only I could somehow be in time to castle. After bishop g7, I'm very worried about f5. I'm not sure what this move is about, frankly. I don't think it improves my lot by a great deal. And now he is sort of ready for f5. I don't see how I can stop it. Maybe I can include this move. It's all very, very awkward, but on the other hand, I only need to play bishop g7 and castles for my position to, you know, start resembling something human. This is the sad truth about my internet blitz these days. I'd be sort of okay at it if I was faster and also if I was capable to just sort of executing the moves I was planning to make. g4, h5, it's frankly it's a lot better to just pass in that position. If white plays g4 and black says, yeah, I'm good, it would lead to better outcomes than playing g4, h5. But this kind of played into my hands there, because I think my opponent did not realize what the point of queen e7 was. And this is the whole point of queen e7. I'm now ready to meet f5 with e takes f5. And he cannot recapture with the pawn because I will take on e2 and on g2. And now I might be okay. I'd hesitate saying, yeah, something like this might still present a serious problem for me. But I mean, compared to where I was a moment ago. What do you think of FIDE's condition and how whether it can improve by Azar Mist? It's early in the morning and I woke up in a reasonably decent mood. Why would you have to ask me that? Why did you have to ask me that? It's not a particularly cheerful topic. I don't think it's, you know, some sort of, you know, change in the way it's being run would be a good thing, but how, whether, and when this will come about is not really a question I can answer with any degree of, you know, certainty or conviction. I wanted to play queen b4, but that's not such a bright idea. And I don't really want to play an endgame. I want to give mate. So I will refrain from... I mean, after queen f2, my advantage is very, very significant, but I would much rather do something more exciting. But yeah, this is the thing. I will have to continue running with this queen for a while. But once this knight lands on a4, I think I will create enough direct threats. The thing about, you know, the sentence Kirsan needs to go is, it has been uttered before by a number of various people, but I don't think people are lining up to replace him. That is not an argument for, you know, him being FIDE president until he is 88 or anything, but I don't think it's a job which attracts a lot of viable candidates right now. Not that I follow chess politics all that closely, but my impression is it's one of those Marx quotes, yeah? I wouldn't want to be a member of any club that would have me as a member, you know. People who are actually running for this post Let's finish it at that. Never really studied the the proper closed Sicilian. Not entirely sure what I'm doing here. People attempting to cheer me up by discussing cricket. I will at some point, I guess, get to cricket during this this stream, but let's not do it just yet. I think the closed Sicilian is fine. There's nothing wrong with the closed Sicilian. I don't think it will refute the Sicilian, but it's an opening you can play if you want to. And also, I don't think I'm replying to it in any kind of a critical manner, and I quite like my opponent's position here. Exactly, bishop h6, the knight comes out to e3, then f4, f5, and mate. This is a a very sensible plan, which sort of I know of its existence, and I still, I think, played directly into it, which is not very bright. My position is not horrible, but my approach to the opening in this game has not been exemplary. Let's put it like this. If you do not use this as a template. If f4, I can play both f5, which I don't really like because it makes the bishop on g2 enjoy life a lot more, or I can play f6. And after knight e3, I thought I can maybe play d5, which would improve my structure and make my position look a little bit more harmonious, I think. Although, frankly, I would prefer this pawn on b6, not b5. Considering the fact that my opponent played queen d2 and knight d1 so early, I think maybe I should not have even gone for the whole b5 counterplay, because it's aimed at driving the knight away from c3, and if white is so perfectly in time to meet it with queen d2 and knight d1, which is the best way for white to meet this idea, I don't think it's such a great plan for black to continue playing into that, so to speak. And knight c3 is a very good move. That was the one move that was worrying me when I was debating whether to play d5 in my head whilst my opponent was thinking. This is a bit of a risky tactical idea, but it seems to work out. After bishop takes c6, I have b5, b4 here. Okay. Now I'm very happy about my position. That maybe is a bit of an overstatement, but at least I'm not losing any material immediately. And let's open the b file for this rook. It's not strictly speaking necessary, but I don't think it's a bad idea. Also, I should probably speed up a little bit. Since the Berlin is hard to win against, why isn't the Scotch seen more often at the top level? It's an interesting opening. That's a good question, Chess Chipmunk, and that's actually a huge blunder, so this game is more or less over. The Scotch, Kasparov played it on a very, very serious, he played it in World Championship matches, he played it against the very top players in the world with great success, but the thing about the Scotch is that it has been analyzed to a very, very serious degree by now, and you need to come up with some... it's all the same people. I see some challenges from people I would like to play in my quest for 2800, which is not really going anywhere, but I would like to give some new people a chance, and I see the same people I've been playing and the same people I played in on Thursday, and that's just not on. Returning to the Scotch, the thing about the Scotch is that in particular the bishop a6 lines have been analyzed more or less into dust, and it's very difficult to come up with anything drastically new there. What am I supposed to play here? I think it's bishop d3, but I'm not sure. It's been a while since I looked at this. I think maybe I'm supposed to do this. Generally speaking, after bishop f4, the more critical setups are supposed to be the ones with the early c6 followed by bishop f5, precisely to get the bishop to f5 before white gets the bishop to d3 or the queen to c2. Because what I got right now should be quite attractive to me, for me. Although, yeah, this is a bit of a worry. I will need to do something about this. I can probably sort of swap my advantage for a different kind of an advantage here. h7 is hanging. If he goes h6, I will just take on e6. And it's not a good bishop, and I'm a bit sad about trading it, but allowing c4 and bishop f5 also didn't appeal very much. And here my slightly better development, and also the king on g8 will be very, very unsafe for the rest of that game. With the bishop on g6, and if I ever manage to open up the center here, my attack will be crushing. Like rook d1 followed by d takes c5 and d3, e4, for instance. This I think is too slow. Although I'm not sure about d takes c5. Now he has this plan of knight c6, knight e7, which I should probably. But frankly, even if he achieves that, that doesn't equalize. That just makes his position a little bit more playable. But the weakness of the light squares will continue being a huge topic, and this cannot be right, I think. I really want to play e4, but maybe it's a little bit too early. Because e4 knight takes e4, the bishop on f4 would be hanging. I think I need to regroup a little bit here, but I'm still fairly confident in my overall assessment of this position, but I may not have been the, my approach may have been a little bit too slow. Not sure what this is though. He wants to go knight h5, which I kind of ignored mistakenly. I'm not sure this is great, but this is generally the point in these structures. You never play e4, well, never is a very strong word, but you generally want to play e4 followed by the immediate e5, so that the bishop on b1 never gets locked down. Because this bishop is, far and away your biggest trump in these types of positions. And I want to stop d4, d3 forever. I don't want to ever think about this counterplay at all. f4 is a horrible move. I should have thought about it for a bit longer. This actually makes my attack slower and not faster. Should have gone h4, h5, and now I have this hole on e3, which I need to worry about. This was a very poor move. I will have to switch to. Yeah, this sequence of moves has been appalling from me. Really, really poor. I'm probably seriously worse now because of yeah. I forgot the knight can take on f4, and now I have to fight for equality, which might not be there. This was a weird transfer though by my opponent, because the knight has no real... Knight f4 would be a problem next move though. I want to go rook c6, but it just makes no sense because knight will return to f4. But this endgame once again is better for me. Lots and lots of mistakes in the late game here. I should take on g6 at some point. Cheeky. Yeah, okay. If that's what people want to do. And that cost me how many points? That's just wrong. How did that end up costing me 23 points? Who's in charge of that rating system? Knight h5, the king just goes to h8 and then knight f5, and I didn't really see the point. But queen b7 was horrible. Not because knight h5 was strong, but because queen b7 was horrible. But instead of f4, h4 or more or less any move would have been very, very strong. f4 is basically a move with no upside and a lot of downsides. But yeah, that was an uninspiring finish to the game there. Yeah, I should probably find and tick the auto queen box, but it wouldn't have won me that particular game. Okay. That particular game I wasn't winning, I think. That would have won me half a second somewhere, but I don't think it would have decided the game. Bishop f3 is a, you know, on some level is a sensible idea because you want to stop d6, d5, but on the other hand, I can now go for this bishop. But now I'm changing my mind because with this structure change, this bishop on f3 is actually white's worst piece, and I'm not going to be trading it for my beautiful knight on e5 under any circumstances. I will, however, play bishop g5 if I'm allowed to. My opponent should definitely consider playing something like queen d2 here because, yeah, that is just not correct, I think. But it seems like he's very set on pushing for c4, so maybe I can wait for a move, force him to make some other move which I don't really think is necessary, something like knight d2, and then I will play bishop g5. Because it seems that you know, it's possible to guess what my opponent is aiming for here, and then including rook c8 is not a bad idea at all. No, I'm only kidding about the 2800 and the rating. It's not really that important. Sorry about that. I will be taking the queens though. But I am quite seriously better here already because the bishop on f3 is horrible. And generally Generally, the black develops a lot of initiative on the king side. The king on h1 is quite troublesome here, and white is a very long way from creating any kind of play on the queen side. The b4 c4 c5 plan probably will never materialize here. It's probably not the smartest idea for me to actually answer questions in chat while I'm playing. It makes me even slower, and I'm not that fast to begin with. But this way I think we managed to cover the most amount of topics. So it's a good idea on some level, and not such a great idea on many others. And this is the line I was hoping to play yesterday. I hope he goes e4 here, because yeah, this is the line. Yeah, I'm very sad he goes bishop b3 here, because if white plays d4, there's a very nice line connected with the knight d4 pawn sacrifice, which I wanted to show to you guys. Some of you probably know of its existence, but for those of you who don't, it would be an interesting theoretical discovery. This is supposed to be perfectly fine for black, but it's a lot more boring. Yeah, the trick is to be shameless about flagging. This is correct, but I'm not sure if I should already go for this, but I feel like it's probably not a bad idea to start my counterplay straight away here. Do you think aggressive players have to play aggressive openings? And which openings are most aggressive? I think, you know, it's generally a good idea to tailor your opening repertoire as closely as possible to fit with what you do best. So yes, you know, aggressive players should probably play the most dynamic openings. Not aggressive openings. There's not really... I don't think there is such a thing as an aggressive opening. But playing... the most obvious choice, for instance, would be, you know, if you choose between picking the Sicilian or, you know, the Spanish complex as your main reply to 1e4, and you feel that dynamics is your strong point, I think it makes a lot more sense to pick the Sicilian for a dynamic player than it is to pick the Ruy Lopez. But this is, you know, these are very general guidelines. You can't really, you know, cover this subject in 3 sentences. But of course, it makes a lot of sense to play to your strength and not to your weaknesses. What's my favorite gambit? Benko, Blumenfeld, or King's Gambit, or something else? Once again, favorite in, you know, in what sense? Favorite as in the one I think is the most correct? Favorite as in the one I like playing the best? Or it's very difficult to quantify these things. This is a weird move. I'm not sure it's a good one. I should probably play b4 at some point, and I don't like bishop b6 because I've played sort of directly into the f5 problems. Yeah, that was really bad. Has to be rectified immediately. And now queen a5 is a problem. My last 3 moves or so were of the reasonably poor quality. But I'm being given some time to recover by my opponent here. For some reason I thought I could do that and not lose any material, but the c5 pawn gets lost, which is something I failed to account for when I went for this line. And I will also get well, calling this flagged, I think, is unfair to my opponent because he's playing a perfectly normal chess game, but I need to stop talking is what I'm trying to say. And this is a horrible mistake because now queen f7 will win material. Damn. Can we maybe confuse our opponent a little bit here? But probably not. Don't really understand what's happening, need to play faster, and I'm not playing faster. Yeah, that was a huge mess. That was a huge mess. It is now a draw, but I was probably completely lost somewhere around here. He could have just taken on h3 first, and I don't think I have anything here. It's just a full piece. Bishop takes f7 was flashy, but completely unnecessary. Basically here I didn't have enough time to stop and think for more than 3 seconds, and I realized that rook e5 runs into the tactic I was talking about. I was just planning to play queen e7 here like a normal human being, but then I spotted that I lose immediately because of queen takes f7. And if instead of this after rook c1 I play some normal move like bishop e6, I'm probably better already. Yeah, nice of my opponent not to force the matter with 30 against 7. I mean, the final position is of course completely drawn because I will exchange b5 for a2, but it never stopped people who wanted to continue. And as for this opening, let me just, since we didn't get the chance to actually show it on the board, let me show it after the game. There's an old line which starts with these moves. This is kind of the point of playing bishop d7 and not rook b8 here. You play queen c8, the pawn on h3 is hanging, and if it's impossible to play king h2, which is what you would normally want to do here because of knight g4 check and the queen on d4 gets lost. Therefore white is forced to play h4, to which I think, let me think, I think you play knight g4, queen goes, well, anywhere, and then you play b5. And there's a lot of counterplay on both sides of the board. There's a lot of counterplay on the queen side because white is normally forced to take on b5, and white is even, he has the option of being even 2 pawns up immediately, but there's a tremendous amount of counterplay here, and I was aiming for that, but bishop e3 is probably a much more solid move here, even though it doesn't really lead to anywhere near as much excitement. Okay, one more game against a higher rated player, and then I play some below 2000 opponents. Have I never replied to you, Doggy69? That's very regrettable, but I can't really. Hang on. Why don't we see 2 knights defense being played at the high level at all? What's a 2 knights defense? Bishop c4, knight f6. If it's bishop c4, knight f6, you do see it occasionally. I'm not very good with names of the openings, frankly. It's very embarrassing, but that's just the way things are. Yeah, Benoni has been making a comeback recently. That's very true. There's been a decent amount of Benoni played at a very high level. Fabiano has been playing the Benoni. Grishuk has been playing the Benoni for, quite seriously for a while. I mean, the two knights, knight g5 is only one of the issues, I think. The main issue is that if white plays d3, I don't think you necessarily gain anything compared to the Italian. I think most people switch to the Italian anyway. But yeah, mainly nobody wants to bother with studying knight g5 and you know, all of the gambit variations there. But I think people do employ this move order every now and again. It's a nice semi-bluff because I think if somebody you didn't expect to do this actually plays knight f6 against you and you wanted to play the gioco piano, you most likely will play d3, because who knows what he means there. You know, it might be the Truxler, the dreaded Truxler. But in general, I think it leads to transpositions, and also it feels like too much work for too little reward for black to do this, since, you know, the normal Italian seems to be doing quite decently, so why bother? I don't think knight h5 followed by f5 is a prescribed way of dealing with this, although I'm also not at all sure that what I am doing is the best way of dealing with this. I might be getting carried away here with my quote-unquote sacrificial play here. But I quite like my position, because if I do manage to break the queen side open, my superior structure and my better piece coordination should be the most important and the most telling factor here. Yeah, instead of knight h5, knight e4 is of course the main theoretical move. That much is clear. And there is a great deal of theory connected with it these days, which I am, you know, no kind of expert on at all, but I can perhaps bluff my way through the initial couple of moves there. Every German grandmaster plays the French. I'm pretty sure that's not true. I'm sure I can find some German grandmasters who don't play the French. This is a bit of a sad choice for my opponent, but I think he was kind of forced into it, because otherwise it was very difficult to stop d7. But I'm breaking through here anyway. The rook will land on c7 to devastating effect in most lines here. I could also just play queen takes a5, but I don't want to give him the e2 pawn either. And here I'm tempted to play bishop h6, so that I can later play knight g5 and go for some kind of a mating attack, but I'm not sure it's the best move objectively. Maybe this is stronger. People are trying to convince me to play the French with black. There are some really weird people out there. I wonder if my opponent wants to play bishop h6 here, which might not actually be losing, but it probably is the only move. I'll be very impressed. By not losing, I mean not losing by force. That's an early resignation. He could still have fought on by bishop h6, and if bishop d5 he can play bishop e6. It's a weird position, and you know, you get the feeling that white somehow will emerge on top after some kind of a simplification. I can win some material immediately by taking here, and playing maybe even the immediate d7. And I will eventually win this position because I will collect the I will be in a full exchange up because both a pawns will fall. I mean, here I can just take on c1 and start collecting. But just resigning after knight g5 was a bit hasty. Okay, so I promised some somewhat lower rated challenges, so let's go for those. What am I? Ah, there was a mention of the Scandinavian in. There was in suggestions for yesterday's, not yesterday's, the previous Banter Blitz session, but since I did not fulfill that, let's do it now. Not sure what c3 is all about. It's not a move that feels necessary at this, at such an early stage here. c5 d4 will transpose to some kind of weird a lap-in. I mean, it's not a bad move, and white is still doing perfectly fine, but I don't see why it needed to be played so early. A bit of a weird mixture from my opponent. The bishop, I think if you play c3 and d4, the bishop normally goes to d3, not c4. But this is, once again, this is perfectly fine. And if I'm entirely honest, I would probably prefer to be white in this position rather than black. I quite like these types of setups for white in general. He should probably, I was about to say, he probably should not allow me to play c5 because this makes my life slightly easier. Bishop e3 looked a bit weird, but I think stopping c5 has to be given a reasonably high priority here. Does Budapest Gambit equalize? Probably not. I would say, I mean, I played it on a, it was one of my main openings at some point in the early 1990s, but as with everything else, if you study it seriously enough, it's a playable opening. But in terms of objective equality, no, I don't think it equalizes. I'm still a little bit worse here, actually. Because this knight on a6 is still very awkward. Not that easy to bring it back into play. And I have to constantly watch for knight b5. a4 would be a very decent move here, I think. Maybe I'm more than a little bit worse here after a4, because a4 followed by knight b5 will be, I think, quite awkward to meet. Queen a2 is a decent move as well. This I don't like. This I think is a complete, it's a change of direction which black will welcome. Because you probably are not actually giving any kind of mate on the king side here, and you are giving black time to regroup, bring some of these horrible knights back into play. Do I play the stone wall, and what do I think about it? I do not play the stone wall, but I think it's a perfectly sound opening. When I made a decision to include the Dutch in my repertoire for the Hanti candidates, I chose the Leningrad system, not because I'm from Leningrad necessarily, but because we felt, me and my seconds, we felt that it gives black the best chance of getting an unbalanced position with chances for all three results. And for the Hanti candidates, I chose an approach which was maybe not the most we chose an approach which was very high risk, high reward. I think I need to go for the material here and hope it doesn't lose. Actually, maybe it does lose. I was planning to take on d4 and then take on e4 and on f5, but if after I take on e4 he might take on g6, and it's almost mate. But I can do it the other way around. So I played the Leningrad, and I lost a position in which I was close to winning after 10, well, winning maybe is strong, but I was doing exceptionally well after 10 moves with black against Shahryar Mamedяров, and I managed to lose that position somehow. And then I won a very weird game against Kramnik later in the tournament, in which he just dodged the opening discussion, completely played something very offbeat, and he had a decent position out of the opening and then blundered something. Sorry, Shaky, that's not how math works. Yeah, we should just sort of make a head count. I have more rooks. So, and the stone wall is a lot more solid than the Leningrad, and I think it's probably more sound than the Leningrad. But this brings us back to the topic we discussed a little bit earlier about playing to your strength. And I don't think playing very, very close structures where you will need to maneuver behind a pawn wall for a while is necessarily something I do particularly well, or, you know, better than other people. Whereas playing some sharp tactical positions where, you know, handling of initiative and precise calculation is the most important factor is probably what I do best. Bishop e2. This is my game against, my first ever classical game against Kasparov started like this. I was white. And I played d4 here, which I think is the only try that gives white any chance of an advantage. Because if you don't play d4, I think black can play e5, either immediately or maybe after castling first. And I would definitely play d4 here, because I don't think you will get another chance here. If white takes, black gets a dream Maratzi-Bind type position with reversed colors. Everything is developed. We, as black, didn't really waste any tempi on, you know, moving the pieces into proper positions. I didn't have to play bishop e7 and then bring it back to g7, wasting 3 tempi. So black is immediately completely comfortable and maybe even slightly better. The critical try is d4 at some point, probably here. It's a pawn sacrifice, but it's a very playable one. Kasparov accepted it and lost, although the position is objectively probably okay for black, but it's difficult to play, and I ended up winning. I probably should have thought about this. If he plays queen d2 here, he probably gets to trade my g7 bishop for this bishop, which is a good thing for white here. Although not a groundbreaking achievement, but something white probably would want to do. There's also the plan of bishop h4 and bishop g3, which might be quite decent in some positions. Yeah, I forgot he wins the e5 square back by doing this. I haven't done justice to this position, particularly in the last couple of moves here. White is at least perfectly fine now. This is mainly to shift this pawn from the light squares, because after ab5, ab5, d4 it might have become a target. d4 is still a perfectly reasonable idea here. I would very seriously consider playing d4 either immediately or maybe take on b4 and then play d4. I quite like my opponent's position here. My play sort of after a4, I should have given it some more thought, and maybe I should have chosen something more precise. I think I need to go for this endgame, but I don't really mind. Structurally my position is still perfectly sound, but I allowed some piece trades which were unnecessary to allow. But I don't mind at all the queens coming off. How to get better at blitz? Classical chess is easier to blunder less. That is sort of true. I think with blitz in particular, the advice should be very, very simple. In order to get better at blitz, you should play more blitz. But you should play it seriously. The thing about blitz chess is that you will not be making any progress if you just treat it as a kind of a, fun way to spend half an hour in between doing something meaningful. You should try and approach every blitz game as a game in which you want to do well, in which you want to play good chess, in which your moves need to make sense, and not just, attempt to let's put it on b3 for now, so that the pawn on c5 never hangs. If you treat every single blitz game as a chess game which you care about, and you want to approach with the more serious intentions, then you will improve. This probably decides the game, because not only do I win this pawn, I also get to my opponent's queen side finally, and I think it's about to completely collapse here. Does being good at math help in getting better at chess, or vice versa? I don't think there's a direct correlation there. I think chess players are more likely to be reasonably good at math than, a random selection of people, because these are, similar outlets. But I don't think there's a direct connection. This will be hard. This dude is quite strong. I think I played him before, but not in recent times. Also, against strong players, it probably makes more sense to play my own stuff and not some random openings. Not that Grunfeld is necessarily a random opening, but when I play 3 minutes with no increment against people who are, judging by their rating, very serious active online blitz players, it probably makes sense to switch to 1e4, but I never do. I think Old Shaky is correct there. He says, I wrote my BA on chess actually, and the most difficult thing to describe when coding a chess engine is the assessment of the position. I may have told this story on an earlier Banter Blitz, but I have a friend, I've actually seen him after a long period of not seeing him. He's been living in the valley for a while now. He's a very, very good coder, and I think now he's more in a management position, but he started off writing code and made his name doing that. And he's, I think, 3 years older than I am. And when we were kids, we actually wrote a chess playing program for giggles. It wasn't a particularly good program, but I did play chess to some kind of mediocre level. Yeah, I was worried about this. I'm kind of one tempo short here. If I could somehow manage to play knight d4, I'd be much better. But I need to waste time on some unfortunate moves here. And we wrote a program which played chess to a level that we gave it the old I think it's, for some reason, I think it's attributed to Morphy. The study where white has a king on f8, a rook on h1 and a pawn on g6, and black has a king on h8, bishop on g8 and pawns g7, h7. I'm not sure this is a great move, because it actually gives me time to do exactly what I want here. And it's a mate in two problem, basically. So we worked on the program until it was capable of actually solving this. I'm not sure this is correct, but I want to try. And once we coded it to the extent that it was able to solve this problem, and you have to understand that this was done on probably something like 86 or maybe 286 processors. There's probably some people in chat who know what that is, but not very many. And once we managed to get it to solve this problem, we decided to give up and stopped working on that project. But yeah, teaching the machine how to evaluate positions where there's no, immediate capture of material is not easy. Rook h6 is the answer. Yes, correct. Seems like my opponent believed me with this sacrifice, which probably he should have done because I couldn't see any refutation. Do I blunder something if I play d6? Because I really want to play d6. I think I'm winning here. This actually is a pretty decent game once he allowed me to get the knight from e2 to d4. And this is what I was talking about. The moment this knight becomes free, this position I think is perfectly fine for black. But here, let's say you occupy the open file and you wait for me to settle on squares like rook f1, even knight d3 maybe is a suggestion, because the rook has no, I mean, I have to play something like rook b1, which is a bit awkward. There could be tactics. Sorry about that. I should have given you some advance warning so that you don't go deaf, but it kind of took me by surprise as well. But once he does that, I'm pretty sure he saw that I will take and play rook c1, but he thought queen g4 will force me into some unfortunate concessions. But knight d4 is a perfect solution to my problems here, because it covers knight f3 check and also hits the bishop on b5. And this tactic, I think it's correct, because if he takes, I take. If he takes on d2, I give this discovered check. Sorry guys, yeah, and thank you for all the bless yous. And then I think I will collect a lot of material. Like if knight c4, I can even take on d2 first. And then, although he might actually save this position. Can I take on f8 first? No, what I will do here is I will take on c4, then I will take on f8, and then I will take on d2, and this is winning. And if he goes queen e7 here, I play bishop c5. And once again, e7 will follow with probably devastating results. So yeah, it seems to be winning. And this position is just, I mean, it's quite clearly crushingly good for white, because the king on g8 is just too weak. Here I'm very confident in saying that I should be totally winning. Okay. There's some very highbrow discussions going on in chat connected to some Oxford professor. I sadly missed the beginning of that and I no longer can keep up. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do here. I'll go knight e7 because I can't really make up my mind just yet where does the d pawn belong, d5 or d6. I think I'll go d5. Not advising anyone to play the Grunfeld against Peter, says Chess Dude. I think you're not doing yourself any kind of a... You're doing yourself a disservice is what I'm trying to say. You played really well up to a point and you made a tactical mistake basically, which... my screen says chipmunk disconnected, which would be very regrettable. I hope it's not true. It says 19 seconds to win and counting down. But Chess Dude, I don't think it's it was a bad choice to play the Grunfeld against me. It generally seems to be in my real life practice, so to speak, playing the Grunfeld against me seems to be a very decent idea. MVL won a very important game against me on the black side of the Grunfeld in our rapid match in Bill, for instance. This is mainly to stop bishop b5. I didn't really like the idea of him going bishop b5 and driving this knight away from c6. I quite like it on c6. But allowing me to untie the rook on f1 and place it on the open file and play knight d4, that was where you went wrong. Up to that point I thought your play was perfectly fine. I'm not sure what this is about and why my opponent would give me this tempo. You actually kind of need to go queen d1 now, which is sad, I think, because here I can win quite a decent chunk of material. And even more material. It's actually, you know, as with life in general, it's one of the harder things to teach yourself to do. You make a bad move and it gets punished, and the absolutely only correct response on the next move is to take this move back. And many people decide not to because it feels weird. And it feels embarrassing to just play queen d3, d1 here. But if it's the best move in the position, you absolutely have to, and you just need to swallow your pride, so to speak, and play the move. I think there's a discussion of the current state of the Grunfeld defense. I think if you compare myself and MVL as Grunfeld players, I think I still get the Lifetime Achievement Award over him. But in terms of current standing of the opening, I somehow managed to land myself in a rouser. That was not my intention. But okay, let's play the rouser. In terms of current standing in the opening, I think it's not certain who's done the most for Grunfeld in, let's say, the last couple of years. MVL has been tremendous for the opening. I mean, I recorded the video series, so I've perhaps done more to popularize it amongst people who were not playing the opening before, but as for contributions at the highest level, I think it's very hard to beat what MVL has been doing. Can I take on a4 here? Is the question. Bishop h4 is definitely not the main move here. People play bishop f4, people play bishop e3. Both of those two moves are very sensible. Bishop h4 is not what they do. The question is, can I punish it immediately or not? If I take on e4, bishop d8 doesn't worry me. But knight e4, queen h4, if he takes on c6, I will take on e4. If he takes on d6 and c6, I have bishop f4. So far I can't refute it, so let's go for it. This might be very embarrassing if I'm wrong, but you have to go for these things if you don't see a direct refutation, I think. Nice. But once again, I'm not forced to capture that. Yeah, white could have played queen f4 there, but that's that exists in a similar line, but not in this particular position. And here, I think it doesn't really give white a particularly good position. We can return to this afterwards. Actually, now that I think about it, queen f4 was definitely a very decent idea. I thought I could just return with knight f6, but then he takes on c6 and goes knight e4, which I very seriously underestimated. This is actually a bit of a mistake, as I now realize, because he can take and go knight f3, and it's a little bit awkward, maybe even more than a little bit awkward for me to defend this pawn. And I don't really want to return it so easily. Apart from that, this move makes perfect sense, of course, because I want the queens off. If the queens come off and I don't lose any material, it's a Sicilian endgame, which is favorable for black anyway, and black also has an extra pawn, but if he takes on knight f3, I might have to return the pawn, which is unfortunate. Karana did play this against Karyakin in the last round, but that was a very, very specific situation. He had to play an opening in which white doesn't have an immediate forced draw. Bishop g6. I missed bishop g6. Bishop g6 would have been a very interesting shot just there. Potentially very, very strong. This, I think, or I thought this loses material, but now I realize after f5 he has knight h4. Whoa. Let's see if he sees it. But actually, if he does see it, I thought I keep on missing stuff because I play too fast, and I should give my brain some time to catch up, because knight h4, I thought, whoa, this is strong. Then I thought bishop e8 is a perfectly serviceable reply to it. But now I realize knight h4, bishop, well, I can't do that. I will do it later. Yeah, this... I have a feeling this has to be... This knight has to be a goner here, right? We'll return to that little bit of tactics after the game is finished. Yeah, Karana played it against Karyakin because he couldn't play his normal repertoire because he needed to win the game. He needed to win the game with black, and if you play the knight up, there's a lot of really forcing lines. First and foremost, you can give a check on b5 on move 3, for instance. Yeah, here I spotted knight h4 and I thought I cannot play f5 because of it. Then I thought I will just play bishop e8 followed by g5, and then I played f5 and I immediately realized in this position white has this shot. which means that after knight h4 I would have to look for a move. And it's not that easy to find. I might have to go for something like this and hope that I will be able to pick this knight up eventually, but compared to the game, this position is a lot less clear. And to return to the point of our original discussion, if he goes queen f4 here, I might have to play knight g5, which is an ugly move to make, because I thought I can do this, but then seemingly just taking a knight e4 is incredibly strong, because f6 is hanging, d6 is hanging. Black's position, I think, might be in severe trouble. What do I think about e4, c5, knight f3, knight f6? It's playable but risky, and the game between Carlsen and Grandelius should be an illustration of, you know, the extent with which you need to go for very, very risky stuff there with black in order not to get crushed completely. But it's not unplayable. Another line I haven't looked at in ages and ages. Yeah, Niels played a very interesting line. He may actually have known something about what he was doing, because seemingly, as mentioned in chat, engines support his approach, and you can never entirely rule out people just sort of knowing the answer beforehand. d5, I think, is almost never a solution in these types of positions. I think you need to try and make some kind of capture on e5 work, because here you end up in a position where you have almost no counterplay, and white has very, very simple plans to improve his position if he doesn't blunder knight bishop g4, but I think I'm in time to recover here. I mean, black's position is still solid, and it will take me some time to find ways to break it open. But on the other hand, once I play a4, b3, king b1, bishop b2, for instance, there's not going to be anything at all happening on the other side of the board. It's rock solid. I don't need to touch this anymore. Also, also pretty much every endgame, especially now that the pawn is on a5, pretty much every single endgame will be winning for white because of the amount of weaknesses black has created. But mainly I will just at some point, I think, realize the f4 break, and that should settle the game. Did I just blunder a piece? Okay, I got very lucky there. I think e5, e4 was just winning a piece. I kind of lost touch with reality there for 1 second, and it could have cost me the game potentially. Yeah, queen f3, e4 would have been an issue here. I would have to do some contortions. I spotted this as a potential idea to at least complicate matters, but I don't think it works objectively. And of course, if I just play something, you know, sensible like queen d2, the weaknesses black has would eventually become, I think, incompatible with survival. But yeah, queen f3. The sequence of queen f3 followed by knight g5 is of very little educational value. Haven't played Dr. Boki in a while. This is a sideline which doesn't really give anything at all, generally speaking, and this is a very, very good and principled reply to it. There are some really, really crazy positions here. Huh. There's great potential for proper insanity in this line, but it's been a while since I returned to it, so I don't remember all the details, and I think I generally concentrated more on bishop takes f3 and then e5. The immediate e5 I'm not that familiar with. I think they will eventually find their way onto YouTube Jogger. I'm not sure how fast this process is, but I think that's generally what happens. I look up and to the left because it's where my second monitor is, on which I'm trying to monitor what's going on in chat. I don't think you absolutely need to do this in order to improve your chess. I forgot about bishop e6 altogether. I mean, it's an idea in all of these positions, and yet I managed to completely ignore it in this edition. I'm not playing this particularly well. I only considered rook d8 as a reply to queen d4, and knight g4 is very strong here. I think I'm quite seriously worse. I need to try and bail out somehow. But yeah, this position is horrible for white objectively. Maybe that's overstating the case a little bit, but it's unpleasant. Just not a good position at all. Bishop c5 is strong. Queen takes c5 is also perfectly fine. There's no real reason for black to go crazy. But bishop c5 followed by castles is maybe even more ambitious. And here I think I need to go for this. It looks horrible, and it might result in me not being able to castle either side for a while. But if I don't do this, if I allow bishop c5, I will never challenge this queen on e5, and my position will be strategically close to hopeless, I think. It sounds like a huge overstatement, but it's not. If black manages to place his bishop on c5 and then just castle occupy the d file, my pieces go nowhere. And I have absolutely no prospects of, you know, improving my position in any kind of near future. At least here, I'm hoping to get e4, e5 in, or maybe f5 first, and you know, make my opponent calculate. f5, bishop d7, castles long. He castles long as well. Or f5, e5. I mean, I would very much like to make f5 work, because after e5, queen g6, I'm still worse. And also there's, I mean, black's play becomes very, very simple there. Yeah, let's try. I think objectively this doesn't work, but by the same token, I feel if I don't do this, my life will be even harder. Just castle's long, and I wanted to make something connected with e5 and bishop g4 work, but I don't think it does, regrettably. This is a weird choice, though, because it gives me... I thought it gives me additional tricks. Huh. Yeah, completely missed that. Yeah, no tricks for me. That's just a full pawn. That's just a full pawn, and I'm, yeah, close to completely lost here. Well played by Doctor. Yeah, if I still had my f-pawn, my position would be only slightly worse here. Without the f-pawn, there's, you know, it's very difficult to imagine a scenario in which this ends well for me. I think I need to create some, you know, semblance of threats. This probably loses by force, but if I don't do this, I will definitely lose. So at least by doing this, I can hope to maybe confuse my opponent to a very small degree. Do the Russians hate the Spanish because of Fischer? I don't think the Russians hate the Spanish. I think the Russians generally, if we mean the Spanish opening, the Russians generally are pretty decent at the Spanish opening. I myself have, you know, very reasonable results in the opening. Sadly, knight f2 is the only move which doesn't lose material on the spot and might still lose by force. After like queen c4, I probably have to resign, actually. Yeah, queen c4 wins material. If he spots it, we can just wrap it up there and then. This I'm much less worried about. This I think actually gives me some hopes, because we enter into some kind of an endgame where there could be a pawn race. This is the best position I've had in a while, actually, which is, you know, a sad indictment of my previous play, but there you go. Would you choose being a professional chess player if you were born again? And I mean by born again, you probably mean the literal sense and not the evangelical sense. Yeah, I should not. I mean, g4 was an important pawn. I should not have given it up so easily, because now it's very difficult for me to even start running my stuff up the board. Who do I support in Baku? I still support my team. Although, of course, it's a little bit of a bittersweet feeling, because no, I'm definitely entering into this. Because I'm, you know, I seem to be the first one running. It doesn't really matter that black has more pawns, so to speak, because rook e5 wins. Yeah, well played. Although maybe wins is a bit of an overstatement, it's still very much a game. Might objectively be a draw. Don't really want to flog my opponent. I mean, I was totally lost and he played the opening a lot better than I did. This probably is a draw, because the rook generally makes a draw against two pawns by giving a lot of checks. I mean, it's a bittersweet feeling for me to be supporting them from the sofa, so to speak, instead of playing. But you know, not supporting my own team would be even weirder. What do you believe is the key for Karakin in his match against Carlsen? Asks Lebreu. And well, I think generally his best shot is to try and get Carlsen into as much trouble as possible in the openings. I think the wide games will be key. If he can manage to severely press Magnus in the opening, game after game after game, then he will have a decent shot. Because I think, I mean, Sergei is a fantastic player, but I think practice shows that if out of the opening he has nothing at all against Carlsen with white and maybe occasionally some slightly worse positions with black, it will be tough for him, as it would be for anyone else as well. It's not, you know, Karakin specific. Seems like Alexander Potier is not there, so let's probably stop waiting there. Sorry. Whoops. Okay, that's senility. There is that is a YouTube moment, if there ever was one. Could you please reissue that challenge, Alexander? I will. Guys, please tell him to challenge me again. I apologize for the senior moment there. Oh god, so embarrassing. Yeah, that's one of the stupidest things I've done in my life, I think. And I've done some stupid things. Let's go for the hardcore stuff. There was a period in my life when I actually played this with black. I prepared it for the candidates tournament in Mexico City, and I was quite serious about this line actually. But theory obviously has moved on a great deal since I looked at this properly. I think the main line in those years was takes bishop g7, and then white would play bishop g3 anyway to prepare e5. a6 it feels a bit slow. Rook a d1 looks logical. I could also try playing b3, but I'll go with the move that looks reasonable here. Yeah, with the queen on b6, b3 becomes a lot better because now black cannot reply to it by b4 and c3 because knight a4 is a tempo. That's a little trick that's important to keep in mind. And here we should go for the opening of the center, of course. I think as far as, you know, me being a great calculator, I'm not sure how great I really am in the grand scheme of things, but it's mainly, I think, natural ability. I never worked at it in any kind of methodical way. It always has been, you know, the part of chess that I enjoyed the most. And I want to go knight takes b5. I'm not sure if this works, but I really want to. I might want to start with knight d7 though. So as I was saying, it was just something that I enjoyed the most. Yeah, this doesn't actually work. Or maybe it does, but not in the way that I originally intended. I will have to revise my plans here. Yeah, and that actually is a problem I failed to consider properly. I was looking very seriously at all the ways that black could try and keep the piece, but returning it and getting this position is also perfectly fine for black. Yeah, maybe there were some, very, very likely there were some better ways to push black here. Bishop d4 is strong. Bishop d4 is very strong here. Although I have bishop takes f7 check, so I guess my opponent thinks I laid him a very cunning trap there. But I didn't. It's just lucky that I had that move. And here I have a little bit of something, because the pawn on c5 is kind of weak. And the bishop is currently tied to the protection of the f7 pawn, but I should probably try and avoid giving him the a file. And I want to move the king away towards better squares. I don't have a lot here though. And that kind of backfired because now I have to work against bishop f6 and I cannot really... I actually have to play king f1 back. I think I can take this pawn though. I don't think there is mate with my king on g2. Rook e1 looks frightening, but I control the long diagonals, so it's not that scary. That was a horrible move though. I actually managed to take on c8. That's pretty great from my viewpoint. Yeah, that was really stupid from a certain moment on, but out of the opening, I went with a wrong idea here. I should be doing very well here, I feel, but probably not the way I did it. Maybe knight d5 here is worth considering. But it does look like I should have something. Maybe even the very simple approach, like takes, rook fd1. Queen has to go to e7 now. I mean, not rook fd1 here. And after knight e5, maybe there will be some tactical shots connected with, I don't know, taking on b5 in some positions. Maybe even immediately. But after castles and queen takes e4, I guess black is not really in any kind of serious trouble. Yeah, I really thought this one I will win, because I was like 5 against 3, you should win. But I still didn't. My flagging skills are really not up to any kind of international standard. And we are getting pretty close to the cutoff time. I think I will play another 3 maybe. Depending on the time controls offered, of course, but probably not more than 4 additional games. Because I don't want to finish too close to the Olympiad. People need to have a little bit of a break. So we've transposed to the G3 dragon, which is something I played with white when I was a kid. And sorry, I've forgotten, but now that I've been reminded, I will challenge you before this is over. Sorry, Alexander. It will be your turn. Mind like a sieve these days, you know, I don't, you know, it's very difficult for me to remember events that seem to have happened 3 minutes ago. I need to be constantly reminded about everything. Knight d4, please. He knows. That's not fair. Knight d4 in this position actually loses material. Because black takes with the bishop and then plays e6 and d5. It's a reasonably well-known theme, but people still occasionally lose games like this. I'm not sure this knight belongs on e5. Maybe I should have put it on c5, frankly. I'm a little bit disappointed with that decision. I think that was superficial. So I managed to drift into a position I don't really enjoy all that much. And I will now attempt to correct my original mistake by moving the knight to a proper square. If he takes, I think I capture his queen, so... But after knight d3, I need to make sure after knight c5 I don't lose to some e5 shenanigans. But I don't think I do. But I can also wait for a move. I don't need to play it immediately. This is a good move though, and one I should have considered. But now this knight goes to e5, and this setup is... He can just take on e5 there. I will have some compensation, but not a lot. Should have started with bishop f8, maybe. But mainly, I think, on move 15, the knight just went to a wrong square to begin with. It never had any business being on e5 in the first place. But at least I managed to stabilize. This position is now perfectly playable for me, but it took me a lot of time to place the pieces onto proper squares. And one thing I need to watch for is the knight from e2 should not get to b5. That would be unpleasant. And as a matter of fact, Actually, I think I can afford playing it to play h5 here. I'm kind of considering playing e6, e5 here to just make everything rock solid. This rook goes to e8, the other one goes to d8, and then I think my position is, you know, very difficult to challenge. I'm not sure if I can play for more than equality here. Probably not. Actually, I'm maybe slightly over optimistic about this in general. Because queen f2 will be awkward to meet next move. You need to have this bishop not on b7 but on e6, and the fact that the bishop is on h3 will be an issue for me here. It's a very regrettable trade to make, but feels like I have to. Although I could be wrong. And now just something like knight f2, and my position is still not that pleasant, but I will have some counterplay connected with a4. Or at least I hope I will. He wants to take and go rook d5, which is probably something I should not allow. But knight e6 loses to bishop b6. I was kind of... This is a very nice move, because I thought he will take on c5 first and then play queen somewhere, and then I was planning to sacrifice this exchange with rook d4. But by starting with queen e2, my opponent is not giving me this opportunity, which is smart play by him. And now takes and rook d5 is pretty strong. I will have to actually go for this position, which is not very attractive. But it's also not that easy for him to break open. He will need to create a second front somewhere. Rook c7 was horrible, though. I needed to have queen e7 in this position. And I knew that and still played rook c7. That's really ridiculous. Rook c7 is a very, very poor move. Okay, let's make more ugly moves then. I kind of put myself in a position where apart from f6 I couldn't see any options. f5 is probably very strong here. Need to create some kind of a distraction on the other side, because otherwise I will just die. Queen f5 is probably mate though, which is kind of regrettable. Bishop takes c5 might win, or it might not, it's unclear. I'm not sure I like bishop c1 though, it gives me... This gives me hope. Maybe not. I think I overstated the hopefulness of this position. Just rook c1, I guess, and then something. This king is just too weak for me to do anything here. Rook c1, rook f1. I can't give a single check here, which is a problem. I don't like bishop g5 check though. I think Jordan is trying to give me give me chances here. Whoa. I probably should not have driven his king forward, but it will not be the deciding factor in this game anyway. I am actually winning now, which is completely insane. I shouldn't have been anywhere near this game. I was totally lost out of the opening. Well, not out of the opening, but the root of my problems was that I didn't play knight c5 here. The knight just has no business being on e5. I mentioned this, you know, more than once during the following events, but it has taken me 10 moves to bring it back to a normal square, and by then Jordan restructured his pieces in a good way and was very comfortable. And the trick I was talking about there, if you haven't seen this before, it's important to know. You cannot play knight g4 because after takes and e6 there are no squares for this knight. If you play knight e3, e5 captures the bishop on d4. And yeah, thanks for chat to for reminding me, or I would have potentially forgotten again. Let's find Alexander there. And this time I will not forget to make the first move. Queen b6. Seriously? This is very surprising. Generally this doesn't feel like this should be in any way good, but what do I know? I'm not sure, even bishop takes c6 makes a certain amount of sense there, because queen b6, you know, in many lines, if you consider the fact that after bishop b5 e6 on move 3, white actually takes on c6 uninvited, playing queen b6 should become a less attractive proposition, but it seems like my opponent has certain ideas here. I wanted to take and play d4 or knight d5 first, some kind of a gambit, but it's probably incorrect currently, which is sort of regrettable because I would prefer for this to become a sharp tactical game as early as possible. People making fun of my verbal tics in chat. Yeah, mock the old dude. This Banter Blitz is about to conclude, Simba. I think. We will play this and maybe 2 more if there are 3-minute games, and if there's a 5-minute game, then maybe even 1. Because I want to end something like 15 minutes before the Olympiad starts. I actually quite like this for black now. I think it's a reasonably decent setup. Nothing wrong with it at all. I will have to think about this for a second, because queen b6 is definitely not, you know, any kind of mainline approach to bishop b5, and I haven't actually seen it in grandmaster practice at all. I think that's correct. I don't think I've encountered this before. I wanted to go knight a4 and d4, but black actually has a very decent way of reacting to it, so I will look for I think maybe I can play knight a4 and c4 though. And try and play d4 later. And hopefully transpose into some kind of a Maritza type position. Which is not my favorite structure from either side, but seems like this is what I should be aiming for now. There are some people in chat who have challenged me ages ago, and I understand that, and I sort of apologize, but I have such an amount of challenges every time that I cannot promise I will get to everyone or any particular person. I will be playing a lot more of these in the coming week or so, because I want to get some streaming done before I start a small marathon, which begins with Tal Memorial late September, and then there's a super final in the European Club Cup, so I will not be able to do much streaming from late September until mid-November, basically. So there will be at least two Banters next week, maybe 3, depending on streaming schedules on the website. I don't want to clash with other people. Apparently Avroch played Queen b6 a number of times. I'm about to lose another game on time here, am I not? That would be unfortunate. I also allowed some kind of counterplay, which I really shouldn't have. But this should still be controllable. The fact that I will lose on time is more of an issue. I should just resign, I guess, yeah? Because I'm never making it. Yeah. That was at some point completely winning, because once I got knight b6 and the black king side, queen side just completely collapses, and this position is quite bad for black, and somewhere around here precise play would probably finish the game there and then. For instance, immediate bishop b3 seems to win a lot of material. But I let the game drift a little bit and also spent way too much time on the following moves, and then, yeah, just not fast enough. Hello, Shahunsky. There will be about 3 people out there who will know what I mean. Yeah, Shahunsky and his favorite openings. We keep on telling him this doesn't work, but he just doesn't believe us. Also, it's not really as bad as it seems. Although it is pretty bad, I guess. But not horrible. And it has great sort of annoyance value, because when you sit there as white and you think you've been given a full pawn by move 3, and you should be winning, and somehow you're not, you just sit there feeling very stupid. And that's not a good move because knight b4 is actually a very strong reply. I wanted to get this queen out before long castle forces me into some horrible contortions, but this is not the way to start. Yeah, knight b4 is pretty strong here. I think I will return some material here and just pretend this never happened. At least I managed to castle, which is already a great achievement. This is the thing, why once you actually manage to finish development, the opposition is okay, but yeah, this line, it mainly is just a huge source of annoyance for the white player. Because you feel like this should not be happening to you. Why are people doing this against me? But once you manage to develop, I should probably at some point study the theory of this opening. But it's, you know, it's such a sad thought that I actually need to work on how to refute d4, e5, d5, knight c6 so that Shahunsky can never surprise me anymore in these Banter sessions. I'm completely winning now, but still the amount of pain and suffering I went through in the minute and a half between moves, let's say 5 and 15, you know, it feels like I should never really go through this again. People are setting me straight on the subject of bishop b5, queen b6, and I apologize if I have been misleading you. Apparently it's a reasonably popular line which has been played by very strong players, including Short, Korchnoi, Avruch, and in recent times and Bent Larsen in history. So I was apparently completely wrong about queen b6. Okay, one last one, and then we'll all go and watch the Olympiad. Only 3 rounds to go, so plenty of excitement in the last rounds there. Oh, okay. There it comes. I normally play 4d3 here, and this is not supposed to be correct. If only I could remember why. But I think this is not supposed to work at all. Somehow. But I guess Roland knows best. But it kind of looks horriblish. If I take on e4, I guess maybe the plan is to play d5, d4 in reply. Or not, I don't know. Let's see. But this has to be very good for white, no? It's incredibly hard for me to believe this can be decent for black. Black is not nearly well developed enough to support such objectively. I mean, against me after 3 hours of Banter, more or less anything can work, as Shahunsky has just aptly demonstrated in the previous game. But objectively, this has to be very good for white. Yeah, but against this, I think I can just take. It's a full pawn. And if I end up with some position with two bishops and yes, my structure is a little bit ruined here, but it's still a position where I have two bishops against two knights and an extra pawn. In other words, excellent for white. I'm probably not playing, you know, in the most precise fashion. I should have been a little bit more direct, but I very much like the fact that I now control the d file. I think he probably should have played rook d8 when he had the chance, because without the d file, creating any kind of counterplay will be that much harder. I'm not sure what this is. Ah, knight c6 is a threat. At least I managed to spot it in time. Almost blundered one of my bishops, which would have been a bit of a blow. Of course, it's possible to spoil him in this position, but and rook d3 is a weird move to make there. It just makes no sense. But objectively, this should not be a problem at all. Two pawns up and the bishop against knight in this position should be more than enough. I don't know why I chose to take with this pawn, but it shouldn't really matter. Actually, I most certainly should not have entered into this. This might not be winning at all. Although, whoops, it probably is. Now it definitely is, but even if he didn't do that, it probably was winning. If he goes king g7 here, I bring the king over to g5 h4, and then I give up the b pawn for the h5 pawn. Should be enough. But yeah, my realization technique there wasn't very bright. All right, and I think with this we will conclude this this broadcast. And seems like I ended up with let's see. No, I actually gained some rating, but nowhere near as much as I needed to achieve the goal I set in the pre-Banter tweets. But that was to be expected. There will be some more of these next week, as I mentioned. So those of you who I didn't get to today, don't give up hope. I will get to you eventually. And thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week. This has been Peter Svidler for Chess24.